excited for today's episode because it is Ask Andrew Anything.
And people came up with some good questions for me.
They sure did. We had this requested by a follower after we did the Ask Dawn Anything. So I get to interview you today, which is fun for me.
Lay it on me.
All
What do
right.
people want to know?
So, first question is, what is your religious background?
My religious background. So I was raised in what I think we call a Christmas and Easter Catholic family for the most part, where we would go in streaks sometimes a little more often, but for the most part, it was holidays and like occasions only kind of Catholicism. But then every school year, I was starting in elementary school, I was sent to the Wednesday night um, religious education. And as kind of a natural born skeptic and the kind of person who questions everything, my religious background turned into me questioning things that the people who were teaching didn't have good answers for until sometime around age 13 or so, when I stood up and asked a question. I was told to sit down and we don't ask that question. And I said, well, I kind of did. So I walked out and sat on the curb, waited for my parents to come back and pick me up, and I never went back. So that was my upbringing in the Catholic Church. It was when I kind of learned to embrace my skepticism.
Do you want to share just a little bit more about a small clip on kind of giving it a second chance after we got together? Because you saw a little bit different version of it.
Yeah, this was a time when you had just come out of your divorce and you had kind of some new experiences around religion, and specifically around one particular pastor who was really there for you.
Yeah, a new pastor to me
Mm-hmm.
for the last year of my life. Yeah.
So, because this was still an important part of your life, and because I do think it's important to, if you're going to question everything, it's not just question it and run away, it's really fully investigate, which I hadn't done by the age of 13.
Right.
So, I did see a little potential that maybe I had missed something. So I dove in with you into the Lutheran religion and spent a few years really diving into it and investigating it and involving myself with it, and even involving myself in leadership with it. And in the end found the same answers, that God wasn't the problem, it was the people that were more obsessed with their religion than they were with the actual experience of God that they claimed to seek. So that was why I let us out of the church then after that second experience.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. It really spoke volumes to me at the time, just hearing you give it another chance. Absolutely. Would your dynamic look different if you worked a typical job? If so, how?
So, of course, our dynamic would look different if I worked a quote unquote typical job. And I did work a more typical job at the beginning of this dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
So, if so, how? Who knows? Because it would depend on the job and the schedule and the time and how much it took from me, what it did to me, and how much of myself I had to give away in order to work that typical job. But there's also a reason I don't work a typical job, because my desire is to, and the thing that's the most important to me in life is love, it's integrity, it's truth. And for me to live my life in the way that matters to me and feels like I'm being all of myself, I have to line my life up with my values. I have to live in congruence with who I say that I am. And the things that are important to me, like this woman, this dynamic, this love, this relationship, have to come first in my actions and not just in my words. So the reason I don't work a typical job is because I created this life for us. I created this business as a way to share this love, also as a way for us to support ourselves and live an abundant life without me having to go sell my soul for 8, 10, 12 hours a day just to make ends meet. Because life is hard out there. It's a challenge to support yourself and to support someone else in the world with money the way that it is, with the economy the way that it is. The old way of doing things just doesn't work the same as it used to. So, yeah, our dynamic would look different if I worked a typical job, but that's why I don't work a typical job.
I want to reflect just a little bit because that question with the word typical in there is really interesting because this is a job.
Mm-hmm.
It it is. And so it's a business. And by the very definition of job, like I see it as like work, get paid. And so I think what they're getting at is the um, set hours, the 40 plus hours that corporate America has taken over. And even business owners kind of go into this working so much and losing sight of the other parts of life sometimes. So
Yeah.
it's an interesting word in there.
Yeah, conforming to typical in whatever you perceive as typical is always in some way going to mean abandoning your authenticity to do what you think is normal or typical.
Mhm.
You know, we don't live a typical life. We don't live a typical relationship. I don't work, or we don't work typical jobs. We don't even live a typical life. And half the year we put our stuff in a trailer and we drive around the country to go explore. So yeah, typical really isn't interesting to me.
Me either.
What's next? What else do people want to know?
How can I empower my man to be more dominant?
Hmm. You can't. You can't empower him to be more dominant. You can only be yourself. From the energy of that question, the thing that I sense in that, or I feel in that, is someone asking, what can I do so I can get more dominance from him?
Yeah.
And dominance, initiation, is the role of the masculine. The man has to be the one leading. So if you as the submissive are trying to empower him to be more dominant, you're trying to lead him into dominance. So now he has two roles, or I'm sorry, two options: to either follow you, which puts you in the dominant role,
Won't feel good.
won't feel good, or to try to figure out how to do it his way, which might be different than your way, which might cause conflict with how you are trying to do it to get something from him. So if you want more dominance from your man, love him for what he brings and focus on your own letting go of control. Focus on your own inner experience of surrender and follow the leadership he's giving you rather than trying to get something more from him. You can't lead yourself into following.
And use your voice. Like speak up for desires, essentially.
Oh, 100%. Share your desires. I think we have another question coming about, desiring and wanting more in a little while here, but you have to speak up and share what it is that you want. 100%. You've got to. But again, this is where you aren't doing that to get more dominance from him. You are speaking up for what you want and then letting the fuck go.
Mm, not controlling the outcome.
Not controlling the outcome, not being attached to how it has to go. Sharing your desires is your work. It's not your manipulation of him. It's not your control of him. It's your expression of what matters to you. And as soon as you're trying to get something from him, he's going to feel that. And his only options are to do it your way, which is going to feel like garbage, or to essentially let you down by not doing it your way. So you've put him in a corner where he can't be more dominant. You can't empower him to be more dominant. He has to do that. All you can do is be an invitation for it.
I love that. You talked about masculine energy for women. Is there a healthy feminine energy for men?
Hmm.
Great question.
It is a really great question. And first, I'll say yes, obviously. But then what is it? How do we do that? We have to understand what feminine energy is in order to really understand the answer to that question. And feminine energy is receptive first. So our healthy feminine as a man is our receptivity. It's our openness. So a healthy feminine energy for a man is an open heart. You've heard me talk about this a lot of times before. We are receptive in our hearts. We're sensitive in our hearts. We are built to receive in our hearts. So a healthy feminine energy for a man is the ability to receive the emotions, the abundance, the expression, everything around you without being triggered by it, without being upset, without getting defensive, without making excuses, without rationalizing yourself, without justifying yourself, without making it about you. That's a healthy feminine energy from a man, is being connected to the emotional experience of the world, being emotionally aware, emotionally connected, being able to feel feelings, to feel her feelings. With your partner, with Dawn, my healthy feminine is really my ability to let her feel all of her feelings and to connect to them and to understand them, but to really just feel them with you.
You do that very well.
But this is the emotional piece of dominance. It's the ability to open our hearts, and it's hard. It's just as hard for a man to let the walls down around his heart as it is for a woman to let go of control. It's the same thing, because it's our receptivity is where we build our walls to block ourselves, to block pain, to keep ourselves safe. We build these walls to protect our feminine. Women build the walls to protect their feminine. Men build our walls to protect our feminine, because our feminine is where we receive. And so a healthy feminine energy for a man is openness to emotions, period.
Amazing. Great segue here. How do you share your emotions in a way that she can stay in her feminine rather than going into a masculine fix-it mode?
Such a good question. Because if what I just said is true, that our feminine, our receptive, is our ability to feel emotions and to receive emotional expression, what do we do with our feelings? And that gets into what is our masculine? What's the healthy masculine that balances out with that healthy feminine? And it's an expression of clarity. It's expression of truth. So how you express, how a man expresses his emotions in a way that allows her to stay in her feminine is by not expressing them from the heart. It's by feeling them in your body and then expressing the clarity and the truth of what's going on with you. It means not processing them with her. Because as soon as I start going outward from my heart, what's supposed to be my receptive center, my feminine, if I'm expressing from my feminine instead of receiving from it, now the only thing she can do is to flip into the masculine role. So I can't be vomiting my emotions on her. I can't be processing. I can't be making word salads. I can't be trying to figure out what it is that's going on with me with her. I've got to do that somewhere else. I've got to do it with other men. I have to do it with myself. I do a lot of it with my journaling. I do it with a close confidant that I talk with every week. So when I am feeling something, what Dawn knows of it is really, what is it? What's going on with me? Here's what I'm seeing. Here's what I'm understanding about myself right now. And it it allows me to open up with vulnerability without vomiting it all over you. Because there's still vulnerability in sharing it. It's just that in order to share it in a way that supports polarity and supports the sexually alive, passionate love that we're after, I can't be emotionally dumping on you. I have to get myself in order. I have to straighten myself out and share them with you with clarity.
And from my side of that question, I just want to share this because you can't control if I'm going into a masculine fix it mode. That's my work to not try to because I sense when something's going on with you, but it's not my role to fix it. And I need to stay in my lane
Mhm.
and respect if you are just off a little bit, if you need some space, and just let you have your human experience too, because you are human. And so it's not that you don't have emotions, and it's not that I don't feel something. Such as yesterday, we had kind of some chaos thrown at us with moving our camper around. And at one point, like I could feel it in you, and you just said, I'm going to go for a walk and let go of some of this tension that I'm feeling.
Mhm.
And I was like, by all means, like take your space. And I didn't be like, can I come with you? You know, even though I love being with you. So there is my role in that too.
Mhm. What's next?
All right. How do I build more confidence and strength to be more dominant?
How do I build more confidence and strength to be more dominant? It always, always, always starts with taking complete responsibility for your life. It has to. Any place that you are playing the victim or blaming someone else or holding on to resentment or acting as if you don't have a choice when you do, it's going to put you in a position where you are not empowered. You are disempowering yourself by giving away your own agency over your life. And if you want to build more confidence, to be more dominant, look at your life and find the places where you are making someone else responsible for your life, for your outcomes. There's a great thing I teach in my course, Becoming a Dominant Man. It's called E plus R equals O, which stands for event plus response equals outcome. And when we are living in a mental framework where we're playing the victim, what's happening is the event equals the outcome. Whatever happens, happened to me. But when we put responsibility in there, because responsibility is response plus ability, it's the ability to respond. So then when we add the responsibility to the events that happen, and we choose how we're going to respond, then we control the outcome. And that is a dominant feeling, to feel as though you are in charge of the outcomes of your life, that things are going to go the way that you want them to go. So it always is going to start with looking for any little place where you've given up that ability to respond and you've just let events be outcomes in your life. And the second little piece I would add to that, because that's the first step in becoming a dominant man, is taking 100% responsibility for your life. Step 2 in that process, which if you haven't heard of this course, it's a self-study course that you can follow that leads you through something I call the 12 steps to dominance, which is a process that you can take yourself through to come into this internal strength, this internal or inner dominance. The second step after taking responsibility for your life is taking care of yourself first. Because we have to take care of the king so the king can take care of the kingdom. If the king is sacrificing himself and emptying himself and burying his own needs, his own desires, his own happiness and joy and fulfillment below what everybody else wants and needs, then he's going to be empty and there's nothing left to give. So if you take responsibility for your life and you start taking care of yourself first, getting some sleep, feeding yourself well, moving your body, just doing some of the basic things that equal self-care, the feeling of dominance is just going to be a natural byproduct. It's going to start to emanate from you because it's in you.
I just like listening to you. I just feel this sense of like energy and empowerment just in listening to all of that description.
And that's what it is. That's what dominance is. Really, it's not a relationship role. It's a sense of empowerment and strength and self-control.
Yeah. Awesome. Here's the fun one. What are some rules you have for Dawn?
So I love this question. It's one we get a lot. We actually did a podcast on this quite a few episodes ago now, where we let people into our rules and our rituals a little bit more. So I wanted to share a couple of them here that I maybe haven't shared before. And I'll explain why here in a moment. But one of them is that Dawn is always to express herself to me with no self-control and without editing her feelings.
Yep.
And if you've listened to our podcast for a while, you know that I believe that rules need to be in support of a greater vision, of a greater purpose. They need to be there for something, not just to boss her around. So why would I give you that rule to express yourself to me without self-control or editing your feelings?
Are you looking for me to answer?
Yeah, why would I give you that rule?
It allows me to let go of control in a way that I didn't even realize I was controlling myself. And it allows me to be present to what my true feelings and experience is and to literally just get it out and let you into my inner experience.
Exactly. Because if you're editing your feelings, if you're controlling yourself, if you're shaping your expression to me, I'm not able to lead the truth of where you're at. I'm only able to lead the version of it that you gave me.
Right.
So this rule is an expectation of transparency to your inner experience because it helps me lead you better.
I would have to say that you pretty much are so attuned to it, which has been so amazing to just witness and experience, but it's still necessary for me to truly express for my letting go and not clinging to anything of what that experience is too, and giving it to you and then surrendering it.
Because I can be very attuned to you, but there can be things that are going on under the surface that I don't know.
Yeah, and you get the whole package this way.
Exactly. Another rule that I have for Dawn is that if she wants my attention when I'm occupied or when I'm busy, she can always come to me and ask for my attention. But my expectation is that she waits patiently in my presence for me to acknowledge her rather than just interrupting me. So that could mean something like coming into the room that I'm in and just waiting patiently until I address her. This rule exists for a couple of different reasons. One of them being that she loves my attention.
I sure do.
She also, there's been a pattern that I've worked on breaking of interrupting me. And so this rule exists as a way for me to help break that pattern of interrupting me, but still not just saying, leave me the fuck alone and cutting her out. So this is a good example of a rule that's crafted in a dynamic with respect to the specifics of us and our relationship and the places that I'm trying to help us grow. And also to meet my needs of being able to focus when I have things I need to focus on, because we do spend a lot of time together in small spaces.
Yeah, so there's a lot of talking. So, sometimes you come to me and you say, I'm going to take an hour of undivided attention. And I'm just like, ooh, I kind of like that. You're like, I'm putting this structure forward for just this little bit.
Right. And there, for the guys who are afraid to upset your women, listen to that, listen to that giggle, because this is her reacting to me telling her, no, you're going to leave me the fuck alone.
Uh-huh. It can be a turn on.
Yeah. Look at her. If you're watching on YouTube right now, watch her giggling.
You can hear it either way.
So, another rule, she has certain emotional boundaries that we've worked together to create that were very important for her in building some separateness in her life from in places that you were collapsing and you were falling into people pleasing patterns.
Yes.
And so I worked with you to help determine what were some boundaries that we could set that would help you have a healthy sense of separateness from in these places where you were still pretty deep into people pleasing and perfectionist patterns. And so there's a rule that she's expected to uphold those boundaries.
Which has been really helpful.
Because then, I become a part of the structure of her upholding those boundaries that are good for her, that are there for her sake, for her purpose, for her own emotional health and well being. But I'm also bringing the expectation and the structure that you are going to take care of yourself in this way. Because if you don't, not only does it hurt you, it hurts me.
Exactly. And I don't want to do that.
So there's another rule. And the last one I'll share is there's a rule that Dawn shares everything with me that she notices about her health and her physical body. Because I make a lot of decisions for her in leading her health and the way that she takes care of herself. So, in order for me to make good decisions, I need good information. So, there's a rule that if she notices something, she feels something, something's off, something feels good, all of it comes to me so that I'm fully informed. to make the decisions that I need to. So there are a few more of our rules that we share with you today.
All right. How do you discipline your sub?
So for those who have listened to this podcast for a while, this answer won't come as a surprise. But if you happen to be newer to this, this particular submissive that wears my collar has had in her life an excess of self-discipline.
That's a polite way of saying it.
She has been over-indexed on self-discipline. So in this situation, the discipline that's required of her is to set boundaries around her self-discipline. It's to take away her self-discipline, to set her free and bring her more into full expression. So the ways that I discipline her, first of all, we use a hierarchy and we have a no punishment dynamic. So the third step of this hierarchy doesn't exist in our dynamic. But the first step is correction. The second step is discipline. The third step is punishment. So generally, all that's required of a good girl submissive who's very rewarded by pleasing and who tries very hard to do her best, all that's required is gentle corrections and very strong leadership, solid boundaries, solid structure, clarity, and then gentle corrections if she forgets. If she steps out of line, just bringing her back in line with patience and gentleness. And discipline as the second level of that would only really be necessary if there was a continued need for correction where something wasn't working with the way that I was trying to lead it and you were having trouble following it. So then discipline may be required to bring something more in line. But it also may mean that I need to look at how I've set this up, because I have the type of submissive who's very willing to follow a lead that I've set well. So if she isn't following, I also need to have the humility to look at how am I leading? Because generally, if I'm leading well, she's following and there's no discipline necessary. So I guess the reason that I go here with this question is because we don't have to make the assumption that just because it's a dom sub dynamic that she's getting beaten.
Or
We
has to.
we have to get out of these mental frameworks where we're just turning dominance and submission into another religion, where we're thinking, well, these are the rules and the way that it's done, so I have to do that. Like, now you're doing the exact same thing as anybody else in any other relationship. You're just trying to follow an external set of guidelines. You have to look at the human being. You have to look at who is it that you're leading and what does she really need? Not what does a dom do to a sub? So the way that I discipline her is based on communication. It's based on really, it's more about self-discipline and solid leadership and gentle corrections to bring her back into line when she may happen to step outside of it, which is never ill-intended. It's if she misses the mark or goes out of line, it's usually because there's some either A, just a simple forgetfulness, or B, there's something blocking inside of her ability to follow me.
Something emotional.
So then instead of trying to beat her into doing something that isn't coming naturally, how about I try to help her figure out why it's hard and lead her through that so it can be easy. But this comes back to the healthy feminine expression question from earlier in men. I've got to have my walls down. So I'm not trying to lead her from a place of inner weakness and where I'm not letting her feelings in. If I'm not expressing my dominance from a place where I have my heart open, then I can't feel what she's feeling. I'm just trying to do shit to her. And that's never going to feel loving. It's always going to feel off.
I think the word fix it, like that's just what came back to my mind here. You can't approach me as something that needs to be fixed either, because that won't feel good to me. Not when we seek authenticity.
Right.
All right. So this one says, I feel like my dominant has no time for me. He thinks he already does too much for me. How do I ask him for more without feeling like I'm topping from the bottom and demanding him?
This question has so many layers wrapped up in it because what I'm feeling in it is a a man who's in his emotional chaos, a dominant who's in his emotional chaos, who's telling her that she's controlling him by asking him for something, which means that he's feeling as though her request is a demand. I'm sensing someone who's very uncomfortable with expressing themselves and has a fear of abandonment tied up in this. Like, if I ask for more, I'm going to get left, or I'm going to be unwanted or not good enough. So, this question really gets at why submissives have to do their part to get out of their people pleasing patterns. Why submissives have to do their part to look at where they are trying to grasp for outcomes and control. Because, the way that that question was asked, without feeling like I'm topping from the bottom and demanding him. Well, why do you feel like you're topping from the bottom and demanding him? What's that feeling coming from? And you can't say from him, because he can't make you feel and you can't make him feel. This is codependency right here in this question. It's, I need him to not feel like I'm doing anything wrong, while at the same time, the dominant in this question is trying to like not have her feel wrong either. And so they're like, when you're all wrapped up in each other, there's no individual like responsibility. It's all codependency. And we have to untangle that bullshit and all those people pleasing patterns that lead to codependency and all of those. Like, this is why this emotional stuff goes with dominance and submission, because you can't make him feel like you are topping from the bottom. He feels like you're topping from the bottom if he decides to feel that way. If you're asking for more because you want more, you were just asking for more because you want more. Why are you afraid of wanting more? Do you feel worthy of more? And if he feels like you're topping from the bottom or feels like you're demanding by making requests, that's up to him. If he can't receive your requests without turning it into him not being good enough or being unable to meet your desires and making that about him, that's up to him. That's his work. You have to express yourself. You have to share your needs. You have to speak up for you. And if he feels like he already does too much for you, What is too much? You've got to speak up for yourself because the expression of desire is an essential part of submission. It's necessary. We've talked about this. This is the masculine, like the healthy masculine of a feminine woman is the expression of desire. It's the expression of her heart. It's the expression of her feelings. And if she's not moving that energy out of her, she's bottling it up. This is why I have the rule for Dawn. Express yourself to me without self-control or editing your feelings. I need to know what's going on in there. And yeah, sometimes she wants more than I can give her.
Yep.
Maybe always wants more than I can give her. And I can take that as I'm never going to be good enough, or I can just take that as a really damn big compliment that she wants more of me. Because, guys, if she's wanting more of you, that means she likes you. It means she's into you. And so when she's coming to you saying, I want more, I want more, I want more, if you slap her, slap her down for that, you're punishing her emotionally or maybe physically. I don't know what you're doing, but you're punishing her for telling you you're great. Think about that.
How backwards is that?
So accept it as a compliment. But this gets into to men's fear of not being able to meet women's needs and desires, and like our fear of what happens if we don't give you everything you want.
Uh, we actually kind of want that.
Yep.
I mean, I can say I would have always said that statement, but I want a desire so big that you can't even meet it all. That just feels expansive and fun and exciting.
When it feels like an openness to really any potential or possibility for me. When your desire for me is so big, I can take you anywhere.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what's the alternative? Don't want me very much, please. Like, don't ask for more from me. Be happy with whatever I give you and never want more. Is that what you want to tell your partner? Is that like how much you want to be loved? Is only a little bit? Let her love be big for you. Encourage it. Don't punish her when she's asking for more. The only reason she's asking for more is because she likes what she's seeing and getting. It's a compliment.
Amen to that. Beautiful. Thank you for all of that.
What other questions do we have?
Ooh, I like this one. I like all of these. This is just really fun for me. What does Dawn's submission feel like to you?
Hmm. It really is everything. It's the love that I've always craved from a woman, and it's the freedom I've always wanted and needed to be who I am. Like your submission makes it possible for me to receive all of the love that I need and also be all of the man that I am and to be free, to really be free to be me all the way. So it feels like love and it feels like freedom.
Hmm.
And that freedom is like a place where I can bring every part of me and have every part of me accepted. It's the freedom to know that I can take charge of my life and go in whatever direction I see is true and right and real, and know that I'm going to have you right there with me without a single question. Now, that doesn't mean you're not going to ask any questions, and your questions might really be important for me. They might be valuable for me to consider things I didn't think about, but that's not taking away my freedom. That's helping me make sure that I'm seeing clearly. But when I say without a question, I mean there's no question that you are going to be right by my side, right at my feet, wearing that collar, wearing this wedding ring, and you're going to be mine no matter what it is or where I go. And that's freedom, because you're going to bring all of your love to me in all of those places.
Most definitely.
So that's what non-submission feels like to me.
I love that. I love that I can give that to you. What should I look for in a woman if I want to find a submissive?
Kindness, aliveness, humility. What you're not looking for is someone who claims the role of sub. Just like we tell women looking for a dominant, the most dominant men don't use the title often. The most submissive women are the women who have the capacity and the capability to follow and to be love and to be in her own aliveness. So if I had to give a set of characteristics, kindness, like look for somebody with that spark in her eye, that sparkle, that um it might even come like feel a little bit like mischief. It might feel a little bit like sass. But you want somebody who can bring some spark, some energy. Like that's the feminine's role, is to bring eros into the connection. That's what she does when she's receiving, when she's feeling, is it brings alive this connection to the infinite, to the eternal, to the chaos of the universe through her. When she's taken out of control, she brings you all the aliveness and all the life and the eros that she's built to access in a way that we are not as men. We can't touch the things she can touch. And here's how I can prove it. Because every guy listening to this, especially, well, any guy listening to this, do you have the same level of emotional chaos in your system as any woman you know?
Great question.
And we all know that. We all know that women have this bigger emotional that's why people say stuff like bitches be crazy, like women are crazy.
Exactly.
Women aren't crazy, they're alive, they're connected to the thing. Back to this question earlier about the healthy feminine. Well, the unhealthy feminine in a man is this blocked off, shut off heart, closed off to the an emotional connection to the world. And so if we're blocked off to it, anything she's feeling in it is just going to be directly pointing arrows at our pain. So she's going to feel crazy when in reality she's just alive. And you're living in a black and white, logical, yes, no, ones and zeros world. And you're completely fucking missing it. So we need her to be in her emotions. We need her to be in her feels. We need her to be in her inner emotional chaos. And we need to be able to take all of that inside of us and just be like, I've got it all. It's all mine. and set her free to feel. But so we need somebody who can be able to drop her own self-control. We need somebody who can be kind. And the last thing I'll say on this is, if you want someone who can be submissive and to grow this kind of a relationship with, she's going to have to at least be willing to grow with you. If she's digging her heels in and saying, I'm perfect, I'm good enough the way I am, I'm not doing anything, you need to change, any of that crap, like, you're not going to go anywhere with someone who's not willing to change. You have to be able to go together. You have to be able to grow together and work towards a vision that you might lay out for the relationship, but you've got to have a partner. So you need someone who can go with you and who's willing to.
Absolutely. What is the most important skill for a sub to learn?
The most important skill for a sub to learn is the skill of feeling as a verb. Feeling outwardly, expressing, using your voice, speaking up. The most important skill is the ability to share your inner experience outwardly. Because nothing good starts happening in your system as a submissive until you start moving your emotional energy out of you. Anything you're stuffing, anything you're suppressing, anything you're keeping down, it's keeping you from being able to feel the fun of being led, of being taken somewhere, of being taken out of control. You can't do it if you're full of suppressed emotion. You can't do it if you're full of the resentment that comes from suppressed emotion. And you can't do it unless you are willing to speak up, because the only way you move that emotion out of you is by feeling it. So feeling as a verb, learning how to let your emotions come out of you all the time and not keeping them in. That is the most important.
Absolutely. Agreed. When is a sub ready to become 24/7?
Well, I have to read a little bit into that question to answer it. But the way that I want to answer that is really, when am I ready to move into being in a submissive role in a relationship 24/7? And I would say, as soon as you are ready to commit to the process of growth that it's going to take of and require of you. It's not when you're done or when you're finished. It's when you are committed to inner responsibility. It's when you're committed to doing what I just said before about speaking up. It's when you're committed to recognizing the places that you try to control and being willing to set them down. It's when you're willing to speak up and share how you're feeling, even when it's hard or you're afraid of upsetting someone. It's the willingness to push your edges and do the things that make you uncomfortable, but that you're going to need to do anyway if you want to live in this dynamic 24/7 like we do. You've got to be committed to actually doing it and letting go of the places that you're digging in your heels, and you are resisting the very thing that you're saying that you want. Because if you're putting up resistance and you're saying you want it, your actions are speaking differently than your words. Your actions are the things that show what you actually want. Now, I'm not saying that this is going to be easy. We still go through this now, 5.5 years into this dynamic, where we still have these places that resistance comes up, where we start to see places that we hold back. So it's not like you have to get through all of them in order to live this lifestyle. You've got to be willing to deal with them when you see them.
This lifestyle is the way through them because it becomes the mirror for where you are hanging on to control.
Yeah. So, readiness for 24/7 means readiness to set down. I'll say it this way. When you're ready to stop making yourself right and you are ready to start looking for authenticity.
One question that I would kind of have in the back of my mind along my journey is where and how might I be wrong here when I wanted to think that I was right?
Yeah. And I guess that opens up a little conversation that we also have to have, because we're not talking about making yourself wrong and blaming yourself for everything and making your partner right, because that's just a fast track to self-abandonment.
Right.
This is, when you ask that question, where am I wrong? It's maybe a different way of asking it would be, what's my role in this? It's not, because we see people that get themselves into this headspace where they just blame themselves for everything and think that if I blame myself for everything, make him right and myself wrong, then at least he won't leave me. And that just puts people in positions where they end up abused.
Yep, but they feel the contradiction in their system and it won't go away.
So where am I wrong is really like, what's my piece in this? What's the part of my past that's being drug into this present moment that I need to see? It's not, where am I bad?
Right. And I say that because I came out of a lot of like black and white thinking, good and bad, and also all of my emotional pain. So, yeah, you have to be willing to look at your side. All right. Cycle tracking seems to be a very important part of your dynamic. Have you considered how you will handle it when Dawn goes through menopause?
Hmm.
Maybe I won't.
Maybe you won't. Maybe you'll be the first. Um, Cycle tracking is important because it's information. It's information that we need as men if we want to lead our woman with authenticity and with respect to her authenticity. We've got to recognize that we are the same every day and she's different every day and goes through a cycle where she may be more likely to be the same on day 7 of this month of her cycle as she will be on day 7 of next month of her cycle. That's more likely than it is that she's going to be the same today and tomorrow. So cycle tracking is important, and it has been important. And it's probably time we do a whole podcast just teaching about this. But it is very important because without acknowledging the truth, I can't lead with authenticity. And the truth is, she's a woman who is on a 29-ish day cycle, and her body and hormones and everything change throughout that month. And so for me to have a loving, authentic relationship, I just have to be in connection with the truth. And that's the truth. I can't just avoid it or wish it was different. So have I considered what I will do when Dawn goes through menopause? Yes. I have already researched things like hormone replacement therapy. One of the things that's important is we will know right away when she starts to get into perimenopause and when she starts to get into menopause. We will know because we've paid such close attention to this now every day for almost 4 years. And by the time we get there, who knows how long it'll be. But we're so in tune with her natural just her natural flow of the month and of her cycle and how she feels and how she, like, how her mood changes, how her libido changes, like how she is different on a day-to-day basis, that we're going to notice right away when something starts to change. So yes, I've already done research on things like hormone replacement therapy, but also I can't know exactly because I'm going to have to deal with the truth, and I'm going to have to learn how she goes through menopause. I'm going to have to learn how she is experiencing herself this month compared to last month, and to flow with the reality of the changes as they go. So yes, I've considered it, and it's really going to be, it's going to depend on how it all plays out.
Mhm. And a side note, I want to share this, that I'll just say it this way, that my feminine health has only improved as I've connected more with my feminine essence and surrendered.
Yeah, every part of you and your cycle, your hormones, your, like, regularity with it, the severity of pain, all of that has gotten significantly better when we've brought acceptance to this rather than fighting against it.
Absolutely.
All right, we're almost out of time. We have any final questions?
How have you resolved your feelings of guilt and shame in a DS dynamic?
Hmm.
There's a couple different ways you could even take that question.
Yeah, the thing I think I would say to that is any time that we can accept ourselves, we can bring acceptance to the truth. The shame always exists in the judgment of self. It exists in the disapproval of reality. So everything about this dynamic has been about me stepping into a place of acceptance of myself, of my desires, acceptance of her and her desires. It's been acceptance of my own desire to lead and to be in charge, to be in control, to use strength and power and authority and intelligence and control to make our lives better. And shame exists in the realm of fear of strength and power and control, and that those things could be used for ill-intended purposes. So have I healed shame? Of course I have, because I've accepted myself. I've accepted that this is a part of who I am, and it's an important part of me. It's a valuable part of me. It's a good part of me that wants to lead. And shame is always healed when we accept the truth, and and then we live in integrity to that truth.
I love that. Very nicely put. Well, thank you. I really enjoyed this. I love receiving questions that we can reflect on. It feels like you're brought into our podcast with us. So I love when we do this, and I love hearing from you guys.
Yeah, we'll continue to do more Q&A podcasts because the feedback we get on these is always really great. We know that there are a lot of you out there seeking to understand what goes into the nuts and bolts and of living life in the way that we live our lives. And we're happy to share it with you. It's why we do this. So we'll continue to do more of these Q&As over time. So keep sending us your questions. If there are things that my answers today brought up for you, or that you've heard us talk about in other podcasts that you want to hear us expand on more, please bring them to us. You can contact us through infinitedevotion.com or on Instagram. We are _infinite-devotion. Or if you're watching this on YouTube, you can leave it right in the comments for us. But please continue to bring your questions because we love doing these. And we will continue to do them as long as you have questions for us.
Yes. Thank you for being here with us today. We truly appreciate you all.
Thank you for listening and watching.